The following is a Podcast One Minnesota production.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, you betcha, yeah.
If it's made in Minnesota, who's making it and how?
Yeah, you got that right.
It's the Makers of Minnesota, focusing on the products and services uniquely made in Minnesota, and conversations with the makers, entrepreneurs, and innovators in Minnesota about how they conceived of their products and how they brought them to market. With Stephanie Hansen, it's the Makers of Minnesota.
Hi, this is Stephanie Hansen. Welcome to the Makers of Minnesota, episode number 66. We are here talking with Minnesotans that are involved in cool projects, doing cool things. And today we have Katie Sanchez from Bee Free Honey. Katie, I am so glad to talk to you because I think I first ran across your product in Surdix. Maybe I want to say could it be 5 years ago?
Oh, no, we were not in Surdix quite that long ago, but possibly 3.
Yeah. So, when did you start? What year did you start with Bee Free Honey?
Well, Bee Free started as an accident.
As most good things do.
In 1999. And then I got my first bottle on a shelf locally in the end of, I think it was November of 2011.
Okay.
And then we went national about 3 years ago.
So tell me, Bee Free Honey, I'm going to have you describe it because I can just say it tastes like honey, but it's not honey. But tell me in your words why you have Bee Free Honey and how you would describe it.
I would describe it as very honey-esque. And then at the finish, there's this breath of apple. And it cooks, bakes, acts, tastes very similar to traditional honey.
And the viscosity of it is just like honey, but it's apple juice.
It's apple juice. How I describe it is it's a lot like maple syrup in concept. It's a slow cook process, but it's simple in concept, but much more complex in practice.
Yeah. So Did you start it because you were concerned about the bees, or you said it was an accident?
I was trying to make apple jelly. I didn't read the directions.
This is hilarious.
I was in a hurry, and I had a lot of apples and a small amount of time, and I was determined to try to make apple jelly. I was a novice jelly maker, and it was the last thing on the list, and I was going to do it no matter what.
Yeah.
And so I didn't stop to take the time to find out how one would go about it, and just guessed.
What was your day job when you were doing this? Or
actually, my day job was I was a pastry chef for Whole Foods Bakehouse.
Oh, okay, sure.
And my son was born special needs, and he was home from the hospital, and he came home on machines, and we had somebody to watch him for a while, which is why my time was so limited. And so, anyway, I hadn't been in the kitchen since forever.
Yeah.
And so this was my opportunity to get it all out of my system. And I was watching it cook, and the person was, tapping their watch saying, I have to go. And so I looked at it and knew it was wrong, but I don't want to waste anything.
Yep.
So I canned it. And in the morning I looked, and it was just like honey. I was, wow, how'd that happen?
Yeah.
And so it was years later, I had started hearing about the decline in the honeybee. And my father was a beekeeper while I was growing up.
Uh-huh.
We grew up with an apple orchard in our front yard. And I have a love of bees, personal curiosity. I started talking to my dad, what's happening. And then he said, why don't you talk to my friend? He's doing it on a larger scale. So then I started talking to them. And what I started to discover is that how bees are in modern day being kept for commercialized beekeeping, which is the majority of the honey in the U.S., is so far gone from, I guess, the natural way you would keep bees.
They're trucking bees from farms to farms. Almond farms, really, in California are where a lot of the bees are.
Almost all the produce that you get is pollinated by
worker bees.
Yeah, commercialized beekeeping.
Yep.
And what happens is, because the natural life of a bee is a 2 to 3 mile radius of pollination, and then they go back to the hive and they make their honey, and the nectar is made into honey, and the pollen is basically baby food, and that's their world.
Yep.
So now they're being trucked across the country. They're being exposed to every climate, and not in a natural way. It's over a couple of days. They can be from in Maine to Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Every crop uses a different pesticide. Every state has different parasites. If if they're pollinating oranges in Florida, it's not just one truck that comes in and lands and pollinates. Multiple trucks come in from all over the country.
So it's like sending your kid to kindergarten where they're getting exposed to all the germs. The bees are getting exposed.
If hive A is healthy
Yep.
and hive B is not, well, they've just cross-contaminated. And so their world has now just become this massive expanse of being exposed to everything. And then because there isn't enough honey to meet demand, only 1/3 of the honey in the U.S. is actually harvested in the U.S. Everything else is imported.
Mm-hmm.
So what they do is they harvest the honey and then they feed the bees sugar, water, and corn syrup.
Mm-hmm.
And so their bellies are full, but it's nutrient empty. So they're being exposed to everything. They're being starved because they're being fed nutrient-less food. And, and then we're asking, why are the bees dying?
Right.
It's not just pesticides.
So from that point of having an interest in the bees to marketing a bee-free product and marketing it, like, how did you latch on to that this is like honey and this is how I should market it?
That was a progression, actually. In the beginning, I was really afraid to market it that way.
Because it would seem like you weren't supportive of bees or that you were competing with the bees. Was that your concern?
It wasn't so much that I was... there are a lot of really angry people with us for what we're doing. It's actually amazing. We've gotten death threats. I've been told I'm an abomination of God.
Why?
Because, I think it's, one, I don't think people understand what we're trying to say. I don't think people understand that we're actually advocating for the health of pollinators.
Right.
And we completely understand that we can't, in our society today, we can't have a honeybee population thrive without beekeepers. We completely understand that. We are not anti-bee or anti-beekeepers.
Right.
But if we want to save our pollinators, we need to look at the whole problem realistically and honestly so we can solve it and not hide behind the cloak and just continue business as usual.
Right.
And it makes people really mad to hear that. I mean, and I get it. Change is hard.
Yeah.
We have to change the way we do agriculture and not have a mono-agricultural system.
So that's the sticky point, with you is people that are supportive of bees or beekeeping feel like you're somehow not advocating for their bees.
Yes, we've been accused of trying to make it harder for beekeepers.
That's so crazy. You're only one lady, one company. I mean, you're making a locally made.
But if you look at just Mayo, the egg industry,
yes,
really went hard after Josh Tetrick because of his eggless mayonnaise.
Right.
And if you look at soy milk, the dairy industry went after soy milk now. And I think that change is scary for people.
Yeah, and for me it is. I will admit when I ran a company, change always was a fear point of mine.
Mm-hmm.
But the world evolves too. And if we're only able to fill a third of the need of honey in the United States, then why not? Your
And
product's great. It
oh,
tastes
thank you.
great.
Oh, thank you.
What my biggest problem is with your product is, so I've used it probably, I thought it was 5 years, but I've probably used it for 3. I'm that person that I don't love honey. I just don't use it very much. I like it. I wish I used it more. I see the benefit of it. I like the taste of it. Sometimes on yogurt, sometimes on ice cream. I just don't really use it a lot. So you sent me some samples, which I really appreciated. And there's like 6 flavors now of bee-free honey. And I'm staring at them all thinking, oh my gosh,
what am I going to do
with all these? So tell me about your 6 flavors and how they originated, or what was the first, the original?
The original was the first. And then from that, we built the line. And I actually have over 60 flavors that...
Really?
Yeah, because R&D is my thing, and I love to cook and bake.
Yeah.
And I just approached it with, how do you use honey? And why not take a step out and add the flavor in? And just, so we have mint, and we steep fresh mint leaves for that. And it's beautiful in teas.
Yes.
But if you're doing a vinaigrette, it's lovely in vinaigrettes, marinades. If you have a watermelon or a melon that's not quite there, you can warm up the honey, and it thins out to a pure maple syrup consistency, and toss that in with the fruit. If you fine chop rosemary, you can put that into the honey, the warmed honey, and the oils release. Toss that with fruit, and it's really gorgeous. It's lovely. And so we have the mint, ancho chile. We steep whole anchos. These are all flavors from ingredients. We don't use flavorings.
I thought about using that like in a pork chop as like a marinade for a pork chop.
Marinade, barbecue sauces.
Or a finishing sauce, yeah.
But it's really nice just drizzled on fresh cut strawberries. You just drizzle it on strawberries, let it macerate for 10, 15 minutes, and then put that on your oatmeal. It's fabulous. On toast, it's beautiful. I mean, really, salad dressings.
I thought about that because I've done some work with Salad Girl, and she's got some vegan dressings. And I thought about, wow, if the two of you maybe partnered together.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many things in this world that are one ingredient away from being vegan. So we're actually working on becoming more involved with ingredient supply right now. So.
Is it hard to get shelf space for your product? Because from what I can tell, you're the only one that's like yourself.
Yeah.
So it's always an education process.
That is our biggest challenge, is letting people know what we're about, and how that they use our product the same way they would use traditional bee honey. There really is no different. You can cook, bake, just, straight up.
Right. So do you have to educate people through, do you use social media? Do you use your website? How do you primarily get the word out about how to use your products and what they're about?
All of the above, and then demonstrations, in-store demonstrations, or at festivals and that kind of thing.
Yep.
Answering emails. We get lots of emails asking us about it. And then, on social media. And then we've made some, we have a YouTube channel. We've made some recipes there. So, any way we can, word of mouth.
So how many people are in the company?
Actually, it's just Melissa and I, my business partner. She's in Texas. And we just... recently, we were on the show Shark Tank.
Tell me about that.
That was crazy.
How did you find out? Was it a casting call? Did you go to the one they had at the Mall of America?
No. Actually, I had applied 2 years prior, and I had gotten as far as the video submission.
Yep.
And I never heard back. And then I had met my business partner the following year, and they called me and asked me if I would like to reapply. And I asked my business partner, and we did the video submission, and they never called back. And then the following year, they called and said that we were had been recommended by someone at Food Network. And we don't know anybody at Food Network.
Right.
We've never been on the Food Network. So I really think they had the wrong company. But I didn't say anything. I just said, yeah, sure.
Of course.
So I call up Melissa, and she was actually at a show in New York, and a food show in New York, and said Shark Tank just called. They want to know if we want to reapply. And she was no, that took so much time.
Yeah.
That was so much work, and they're not going to call back. And I said, it's our video submission. If we just tweak our video submission, I think we can do this.
Yeah.
And she was like, I don't want to do this again. So all I said was, I'm just going to leave this with you. It could be an opportunity we're walking away from. So just think about it. And she felt guilty.
Sure. Good guilt.
So we did it. And we really put a lot of effort into our video submission. And it's a very long, in-depth, arduous process. It is not something where they just accept you and you move on to it is a weekly commitment. It is a lot of time and effort.
And you're vetted, and they're trying to make sure you're not a nut farm.
Oh, my gosh. And every week they cut somebody, and you don't know if you're cut or not. And it's crazy.
So when you finally got on the show, did you make it in front of camera? Because sometimes you can go and not be on camera, too.
There were a lot of people in they call them pods. There are a lot of people in our pod that left after the first day.
Mm-hmm.
You have to pitch in front of the producers before you pitch in front of the sharks. And if you don't do well in front of the producers, then you don't move on. So, yeah. And we actually didn't know we were going to get in front of the sharks until I think it was about 9:00 at night, the night before.
Yep.
They called and said, you're on tomorrow, and this is what hour we're picking you up. And be ready. And, you're just out there in limbo. So, oh my God, we should get back to the hotel and sleep.
So you get to the cameras rolling. You're in front of the sharks. What sharks were you in front of?
We had Mark Cuban, Damon, and Barbara. And then there was Chris Sacca was the guest shark. And then Mr. Wonderful.
Right, Mr. Robert.
No, not Robert.
Oh,
Robert's
yes,
the other.
Mr. Wonderful, the bald guy.
Yeah.
Okay. Who's always crabby.
He's not that wonderful.
So you do your pitch and recap what happened.
It went well. We were actually in there almost 2 hours, and they whittle it down to 5 minutes. And the first hour was a horror story. And they immediately assumed we were anti-bee, anti-beekeeper.
Yeah.
And Damon is a beekeeper. So he started tearing us apart. and they warn you, the worst thing you can do is interrupt the sharks.
Okay.
And so we're trying not to interrupt, but all this misinformation's being put out. And I am thinking in my head, I'll be damned if I go out of here with all of this wrong information about my company. I've spent too much time working on this.
It's so funny, too. Like, I don't know why I'm so stunned at this political nature of what you're doing, but you're making a product that acts like honey but is not honey.
Yeah.
Period. You know, you can have your feelings about bees or not, but, I mean...
And you can use it or not.
Yes.
Or you can...
So Damon gets all in his undies in a bundle, and then the second hour happens. Did you get an offer?
Well, so I was able to explain to stop him at one point and explain to him, and then the tides turned, and then they were able because the first hour I don't think we said more than 3 words.
Wow.
And it was just fighting amongst themselves. And then the second half, we were able to have a conversation. And then we were the first women-owned company, first vegan company, first food company to get 3 sharks.
Wow.
Yeah.
So did you take their offer?
We did, and we closed with all 3.
So what does that mean? Does that mean that someone on that panel is a percentage of your company?
Yeah. So we have Mark Cuban, Barbara Corcoran, and Chris Saka.
I mean, you closed with all 3. Is that unusual? Did they create a side deal or?
No, but it took a lot longer because that means there are 4 sets of lawyers.
Yep.
And every time there's a change, it has to go around the circle again. And so by the time we aired, we had not yet closed, which was a big struggle because we went on the show because we needed expansion money.
Yes.
And when the show aired, we hadn't closed, so we didn't get the money. And we were in a facility where we had hit ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
And even with having hit ceiling, our sales grew 300% that year.
Yep. Wow.
And that's with turning away all new business and all existing business. We were cutting all of our orders in half, if not more, and just outright saying we can't fill it because it became so overwhelming. We literally couldn't do any more than what we were doing. And a lot of bridges were burned.
Right.
And, and you're trying to fill all of this while simultaneously closing a deal,
Mm-hmm.
looking for a space that's bigger, trying to find either a co-packer or a space you can afford to build out.
Yep.
And then the onslaught of, media opportunities, emails from the public.
Yep.
I mean, it's just, there's no way to prepare for it because you have no idea what you're preparing for. And, we did the best we could, but, a lot of retailers got upset with us.
Sure.
And so once we closed and once we found a co-packer and, nobody wants to do slow cooking anymore.
Right.
In this day and age, it's all heat and pack and ship it out. And so it was really difficult for us to find a slow cook co-packer.
Yep.
And then it was training them, discovering that the equipment we thought we had doesn't work for extended periods of time, having to get new equipment, waiting for it to be built, installed, tested, retraining. By that time, Shark Tank is great in a lot of ways. If you are able to just ramp it up, get on that wave and ride it. But it can be a double-edged sword,
I can
too.
imagine. So what percentage of the company are you and your partner left with after your Shark Tank experience?
We have 70%.
Okay, so that's a considerable amount.
Yeah, 10%.
Still controlling interest.
Yeah, 10% for each of the sharks.
And do you have to really work with them, or is it more sending them your P&L and they give you suggestions now that it's kind of all said and done and lawyered up?
Yeah, so in the beginning, they want weekly reports,
Mm-hmm.
and they're a little bit more vocal. And then after they get to know you, then, weekly reports aren't quite as demanded. And if you're in a busy space, they just let it go.
And the investment that they made allowed you to grow, I'm assuming. Was that partly how you were able to have new flavors, too?
Well, no, we actually had the flavors when we went on the show.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. But after we got the investment, we were able to file for a patent for our last flavor, which is flower pollen infused, which, up until that point, our biggest complaint was it doesn't have the nutrition of traditional bee honey.
Right.
And now we've been able to bypass the bees again and go straight to the flower and get flower pollen extract. And it's extracted without any chemicals. And it's a pure form of pollen that has all the nutrients that you wouldn't expect. But it's actually, because we're custom blending it, it is a complete nutrient profile.
Can you describe what the nutritional benefit is of pollen? Because I don't think people get that part.
Yeah, so just as if your food, all of your food has its individual nutrient value. And in the pollen has nutrient value. But so that's why, if you read about bee pollen, it has the potential of having every nutrient the human body needs to survive, right?
That's interesting, yeah, because I know a lot of the beekeepers will sell bee pollen
as a nutrient
something
supplement.
You eat, drink by the spoonful, or yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, so, and it has that potential, but what nutrients are in there depends on what flowers that bee has visited. And you can't, and the reason there's no nutrient label on honey is the keepers can't test every batch to find out what nutrient and then customize that label. So our honey, what we do is we have pharmaceutical grade pollen, and so there's no allergic reaction, as in the bee pollen, which has all the allergens and, you can't filter out the impurities. So our flower pollen is pharmaceutical grade, and we custom blend it. So it has a complete nutrient profile. It has all the phytosterols, and it's actually a 2-page list of nutrients. Cool. Yeah. And so we're going to have the first honey on the market with a complete nutrition panel, so that you know everything that you're going to get in every tablespoon of honey that you purchase.
Of bee-free honey.
Of bee-free honey.
Are you able to make a living at this now? Is this your full-time job and you're supporting your family?
Yeah. Well, we, after all of this and we bought the equipment, we moved it down to Houston, and then the hurricane hit. So up until that point, we were paying ourselves and it was all great and everything. And then, so now we're taking a break from paying ourselves and rebuilding.
And that does kind of happen when you have a company. You sometimes can afford to pay yourselves, and other times you can't, and you just bootstrap it.
It's the reality, and you have to be. How did the
hurricane impact you? Did it impact your building?
Yeah, it impacted the co-packer that we were using.
Wow.
And it was a really scary terror. And I have to say, the scarier part were all of the people that work there that you get to know.
Yeah.
And, hearing that somebody lost their home, and there were a few people that nobody could get a hold of for a while. I mean, that was a lot scarier than, and then for a while we could see the security cameras. The owners would take a snap of the screen and send us a photo of the security cameras, and then the security cameras went out.
Yep.
And so then it was days before.
Oh.
It was,
stressful.
Yeah, and it's, we had just installed all the equipment.
Yeah.
Really?
So when you look to, do you have a P&L? Because obviously you're working with the Sharks, they're going to demand a P&L. When you look out to the next 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, what's the plan? Is it just to keep selling and get into more retail locations? Is it to find more ways to utilize the honey so you can have more customers?
Yeah, we're really hyper focused on ingredient supply right now and food service. Mm-hmm. Because one of the best ways for people to become familiar with your product and how to use it and trusting is to see other people use it and how they use it.
Yep.
It gives a better understanding. And so I feel like we can reach people more effectively that way. And so we've been really going after introducing companies how they could integrate bee-free honey and have a sustainable product, cost stable,
Yep.
and, friendly.
I love it.
Pollinator friendly.
Well, you've really been on a journey. Do you have any words of wisdom for anybody else listening out there that's thinking about starting a food product?
It can't be understated enough that it takes so much longer than you ever plan on. And I go back to Denzel Washington's quote so many times in my head. If you stay in the barbershop long enough, you'll eventually get a haircut.
I love that. All right.
Pretty much in a nutshell.
We've been talking to Katie Sanchez. It's Bee-Free Honey. Locally, I know that they carry it at Surdix. Are there other places that you'd like to mention
Whole
that people can
Foods.
pick it up at?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the co-ops.
Yep, for sure. Thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank
You're
you.
the first person we've talked to that's been on Shark Tank, so that's pretty neat. My husband actually was an inventor and got down the road, did the video a couple times, and then never made it any further. But it was a really fun process, so it's good to hear that you actually made it.
Oh, thank you.
And thanks for being our guest today.
Thanks for having me.